when you're coaching a young youth football Pop Warner type defense, one of the first things you want to teach is you want to teach gap responsibility. And the reason you want to teach it is because you have to have a reference point to tell your players A, where to line up, and B, what they're responsible for. And a lot of youth football coaches will get it to where when the ball is snapped, they just teach the defenders to chase the ball. Nothing wrong with chasing the ball, but you have to have assignments and responsibilities. And the other thing that I see is that sometimes youth football coaches get in the reading guards pulling and keys and all that before they ever do this part right here. So gap responsibility is a fundamental that should be taught with youth football defense. And the way that you do it is you're going to assign inside out, A gap between the center and the guard, B gap between the guard and the tackle, C gap in between the tackle and tight end. Sometimes there's a tight end, sometimes there's not. And then a D gap in between a tight end and wing. Anything outside of that we label as an edge. Now you'll notice that the same thing happens over here. We've got a balanced double wing as an example here. There may not be, once again, a wing on one side, but you've got a reference point. You'll always want to make a strength call on defense. That way, you can refer to the strong A gap or the strong B gap, weak B gap, that type of thing. So that's where you start with your gap responsibility, letting every player understand that essentially there are 8 gaps and an edge out here, and somebody has to be responsible for every gap, or else you're going to have a big play pop against you. Now, the second part is teaching defensive line techniques. And I say defensive line techniques, it could actually be just techniques, period, because your linebackers can use the same techniques. Typically what you do is you just add a 0 to the end of these techniques. So let's slow down here and take a look at it. So what this does for your defenders, particularly your defensive line, now you tell them how you want them to play their A gap, how you want them to play the B, the C, the D, and even the edge. So there's a numbering system that goes inside out. Head up on an offensive lineman is going to be even, 0, 2, 4, 6. Same thing to either way. If you're lining up on the inside of the offensive lineman, it's called an I technique for inside. So a 2 technique inside, 4 technique inside. This out here is going to be a little confusing to you. It's just an age-old thing in football that if you want to change that to make that a 6-eye, nobody would be mad at you. Now, you'll notice that on the outside of the center, all right, the center, essentially, there is no right or left. That is the center. They're called 1 techniques, odd. All right, so you're on the outside of the center's left here, outside of the center's right here. Now, as you go outside, 3 technique, 5 technique. All right, once again, this is a little different out here with your tight end. So what you've got now is you're telling, all right, a defender that I want you to play the A gap and I want you to play it in a 2-eye. Or you might say, I want you to line up on the center and play the A gap and play a 1 technique or a shade. It's often referred to as a shade on the center. Now, First Down Playbook, we give you all of that right here. So let's take a look. Let's put it all together. So here's just a typical, we've got a 6-2 base defense against a 2-back wing right here. So break it down. You've got your A gap. All right, your tackle is responsible for the A gap. What are they playing? They're playing a 2-eye inside technique. This tackle would have their right leg splitting, all right, the legs of the guard over top of them, and they're going to keep their left arm free in the A gap, a 2-eye technique. This end out here is going to have their left foot right in the middle of that offensive tackle, keeping their right arm free in the C gap. So now you have a way of communicating with your defense. You're telling them you're responsible for this gap. You're responsible for this gap. Now back here, the same thing really. You would tell this linebacker right here that you're playing the B gap and you're playing a 30 technique. All you typically do is put a 0 on top of the 3 all right, so that you can communicate with your backers as they flow over the top and that type of thing. So once again, what you want to do is you want to use a combination of gap responsibility and line techniques. And when you do that, you're going to put that all together, and that's going to give you the ability to have a sound defense. And once again, First Down Playbook gives you plenty of coaching points and player assignments for every defense we have as well.